Inflation is a term that often appears in the news and it can sound quite technical. However, at its heart, inflation is a straightforward concept. It simply means that over time the prices of goods and services tend to go up. When this happens, each dollar you have buys a smaller quantity of those goods and services. Imagine you usually buy a carton of milk for $3. If inflation occurs, next month that same carton of milk might cost $3.20. This isn't because the milk itself has changed, but because the value of your money has slightly decreased in terms of what it can purchase. It's a gradual process, but it can have a big impact on your daily life. This rise in prices doesn't just affect one or two items, it often impacts a wide range of things we need and use every day. The cost of your groceries, the price of gasoline for your car, the rent for your apartment, or even the cost of a haircut can all increase due to inflation. Sometimes a small amount of inflation is considered normal for a growing economy. But when inflation becomes too high or rises too quickly, it creates significant problems for ordinary people. Suddenly, the money you earn doesn't seem to stretch as far as it used to, and you find yourself needing more cash just to maintain your current standard of living, which can be a very worrying feeling. Governments and central banks try to keep inflation at a low and stable level. They have tools like adjusting interest rates to try and manage how quickly prices are rising. However, sometimes factors outside of their direct control, such as global events or disruptions in the supply of goods, can cause inflation to spike unexpectedly. When this happens, families start to notice that their weekly shopping bill is higher, even if they are buying the exact same items. This makes planning your finances much more difficult, as the cost of essentials becomes less predictable, forcing you to reconsider your spending habits and financial plans. The core issue with high inflation is that it erodes your purchasing power. If your income doesn't increase at the same rate as inflation, you effectively become poorer in real terms. You might be earning the same number of dollars, but those dollars can no longer buy the same amount of goods or services. This is why significant inflation is a major concern for households. It forces people to make difficult choices about what they can afford, often leading to cutbacks on non-essential items, and sometimes even on necessities if the situation becomes severe enough. Understanding this basic concept is the first step to navigating its effects. Another economic term that you might hear, especially in discussions about international trade, is tariffs. A tariff is essentially a tax, but it's a specific kind of tax. It's a tax that a government imposes on goods that are imported into the country from other nations. For example, if a country decides to put a tariff on cars made in another country, those imported cars will become more expensive for businesses to bring in. The government collects this tax revenue, and it can be used for various public expenditures just like other forms of taxation. The primary purpose of a tariff is often to make imported goods less attractive compared to domestically produced goods. Governments choose to implement tariffs for several reasons. One common reason is to try and protect domestic industries from foreign competition. If imported shoes are much cheaper than shoes made locally, local shoe factories might struggle to sell their products and could go out of business. A tariff on imported shoes would raise their price, making the locally made shoes more competitive. Another reason can be to raise revenue for the government, although this is often a secondary goal. Sometimes tariffs are used as a tool in political or trade negotiations between countries, acting as a point of leverage or a form of economic pressure. However, while tariffs might be intended to help certain sectors of the economy, they can also have unintended consequences. When a tariff is placed on an imported product, someone has to pay that extra tax. Usually, it's the company that imports the product that pays the tariff to the government initially, but these companies are businesses, and they often try to recover these additional costs. They do this by increasing the price they charge to their customers for that imported product. So, if there's a new tariff on imported coffee beans, the company importing those beans will likely charge more to the coffee shops or supermarkets that buy them. Ultimately, this means that the cost of tariffs can be passed down through the supply chain. The coffee shop that now pays more for its beans might then increase the price of a cup of coffee for its customers. So even though the tariff was imposed on the importer, the final consumer can end up paying a higher price. This is a crucial point to understand about tariffs. While they are collected at the border, their economic impact can ripple through the entire economy, affecting the prices that ordinary people pay for everyday items. Not just the specific imported goods themselves, but also products that use those imported goods as components.
Perfect.
Now that we understand what inflation and tariffs are separately, it's important to see how they can be connected. Tariffs can directly contribute to rising prices, which is a form of inflation. When a government puts a tariff on an imported raw material, like steel or aluminum, it makes that material more expensive for domestic manufacturers who need it to make their own products. For instance, a company that builds washing machines or cars will have to pay more for the steel it imports. This increase in their production costs doesn't just disappear. Businesses will usually try to pass it on. This leads to a situation where the price of the final product, like the washing machine or the car, goes up for the consumer. So, a tariff on imported steel can mean that you end up paying more for a new appliance or vehicle, even if that appliance or vehicle is assembled in your own country. This is because one of its key components became more expensive due to the tariff. It's a chain reaction. The tariff raises the cost for the manufacturer, and the manufacturer, to protect their profits, raises the price for the wholesaler or retailer, who then raises the price for the final buyer, you. Moreover, tariffs don't just affect the prices of goods that use the taxed imported item directly. They can also have a broader inflationary effect. If a wide range of imported goods or raw materials face tariffs, this can lead to a general increase in the cost of doing business for many companies across different sectors. These companies might then raise the prices of their various products and services to cover these higher operational costs. This contributes to a general rise in the price level across the economy, which is precisely what we call inflation. It's not just one item becoming pricier, but many items simultaneously. Therefore, while governments might use tariffs with specific goals in mind, such as protecting a local industry, they must also consider the potential inflationary impact. If tariffs are widespread or are placed on essential goods and materials that don't have readily available domestic substitutes, they can act as a significant driver of price increases for consumers. This makes it more expensive for everyone to live, and it can make the overall problem of inflation much worse, especially if the economy is already struggling with rising prices for other reasons. It's an added pressure on household budgets that are already feeling the strain. When both general inflation and price increases due to tariffs are happening at the same time, it creates a particularly challenging situation for consumers. It's like a double whammy hitting your household finances. General inflation means that a broad range of everyday items from food to fuel are becoming more expensive. Your regular grocery bill creeps up, filling your car with gas takes a bigger bite out of your budget, and your utility bills might also rise. This alone can put a significant strain on families, especially those with tight budgets or fixed incomes, as their money simply doesn't go as far as it used to. On top of this general inflation, if tariffs are also pushing up the prices of specific goods, whether they are finished products or essential materials, the financial pressure intensifies. Imagine you were planning to buy a new refrigerator because your old one broke. If there's a tariff on imported steel or electronic components, that new refrigerator is likely to cost more than it would have otherwise. This tariff-driven price hike comes on top of any general inflationary pressures that are already making other things more expensive. So, you are paying more for your food, and you are also paying more for that essential appliance. Businesses themselves are also caught in this squeeze. They face higher costs for the raw materials and components they need, partly due to tariffs and partly due to general inflation affecting their suppliers. They also face rising energy costs and potentially demands for higher wages from their employees who are struggling with the increased cost of living. To stay afloat, businesses often have no choice but to pass these increased costs on to their customers by raising their prices. This is a natural response, but it further fuels the cycle of rising prices that consumers experience, making everything feel more expensive. This combined effect of widespread inflation and tariff-induced price increases can make people feel like they are being squeezed from all directions. Their income might not be keeping pace with these rapidly rising costs, leading to a decline in their real standard of living. It becomes harder to save money, harder to afford unexpected expenses, and harder to plan for the future. The constant worry about making ends meet can be incredibly stressful for individuals and families, impacting not just their financial well-being, but also their overall quality of life as they navigate these challenging economic conditions. Section 5. What is a recession? When the economy slows down. Beyond the immediate concerns of rising prices from inflation and tariffs, there's a broader economic condition that can make financial survival even more difficult. A recession. In simple terms, a recession is a period when the economy significantly slows down or even shrinks. Instead of businesses growing, hiring more people, and producing more goods and services, the opposite often happens. Economic activity declines, businesses might produce less, and some may even struggle to stay open. Think of it like the entire country's economic engine sputtering and losing power for a while. During a recession, one of the most common and worrying consequences is job loss. As businesses face reduced demand for their products or services or struggle with higher costs, they might have to lay off workers to cut expenses. This means that people who had stable jobs can suddenly find themselves unemployed, which is a very difficult situation. Even for those who keep their jobs, there might be hiring freezes, meaning fewer new job opportunities or even wage cuts or reduced hours. The job market becomes much tighter, and finding new employment if you lose your job can take a lot longer than usual. Another characteristic of a recession is that people and businesses tend to spend less money. Consumers, worried about their job security or seeing their incomes fall, often cut back on spending, especially on non-essential items like vacations, new cars, or dining out. Businesses, facing uncertain demand and tighter credit conditions, might postpone investments in new equipment or expansion projects. This reduction in overall spending further slows down the economy because one person's spending is another person's income. It creates a cycle where less spending leads to less business activity, which can lead to more job losses and even less spending. Recessions are a natural, if unwelcome, part of the economic cycle. They can be triggered by various factors such as a financial crisis, a sudden shock to the economy like a pandemic, or even by policies designed to fight high inflation, like rapidly increasing interest rates. For ordinary people, a recession usually means a period of increased uncertainty, financial hardship, and anxiety about the future. Understanding that the economy is in a downturn can help explain some of the challenges people face. But it doesn't make those challenges any easier to bear without proactive strategies. Section 6. The uphill battle. Why recessions make life harder. Surviving financially during a recession is particularly tough because it often combines several negative economic factors at once. The most immediate and frightening aspect for many is job insecurity. The fear of losing your job, or the actual experience of unemployment, can be devastating. Without a steady income, covering basic living expenses like rent or mortgage payments, food, and utilities becomes a major challenge. Even if you keep your job, your partner might lose theirs, or your hours might be cut, leading to a significant reduction in household income at a time when you can least afford it. Compounding the problem of reduced or lost income is the fact that prices for essential goods might still be relatively high, especially if the recession is accompanied by persistent inflation, sometimes called stagflation. So you could be earning less money or no money from employment, while still facing elevated costs for groceries, energy, and other necessities. This creates an incredibly difficult squeeze. Your purchasing power diminishes rapidly, and savings can be depleted quickly just trying to keep up with daily expenses. It feels like you are constantly playing catch-up and falling further behind. Accessing credit or loans also becomes more difficult during a recession. Banks and other lenders tend to become more cautious. They tighten their lending standards because they are worried that borrowers might not be able to repay their debts if they lose their jobs or their businesses fail. So, if you need a loan to cover an emergency expense or to tide you over during a period of unemployment, you might find it much harder to get approved, or the interest rates offered could be very high. This can leave people with fewer options when they are most vulnerable and in need of financial support. Beyond the direct financial impacts, recessions also take a heavy psychological toll. The constant worry about money, the uncertainty about the future, and the stress of trying to make ends meet can lead to anxiety, depression, and strain on relationships. The feeling of losing control over one's financial situation is distressing. This is why it's not just about the numbers on a balance sheet. Surviving a recession is also about managing the emotional and mental burden that comes with economic hardship, making it a truly uphill battle for many individuals and families trying to navigate through the storm. Section 7. Taking control, your budget in tough economic times. When faced with rising prices and economic uncertainty, one of the most powerful tools you have at your disposal is a budget. Creating a detailed budget might seem daunting, but it's a crucial first step towards taking control of your finances. A budget is simply a plan for how you will spend your money. It helps you understand where your money is currently going, and allows you to make informed decisions about where it should go, especially when every dollar counts. Start by listing all your sources of income for a month. This includes your salary, any government benefits, or income from side jobs. Once you know your total monthly income, the next step is to track your expenses meticulously. For at least 1 month, keep a record of everything you spend money on. This means every coffee, every grocery item, every bill payment, and every small purchase. You can use a notebook, a spreadsheet, or one of the many budgeting apps available. Be honest and thorough. At the end of the month, categorize these expenses: housing, food, transportation, utilities, healthcare, debt payments, entertainment, personal care, and so on. This will give you a clear picture of your spending habits. With your income and expenses clearly laid out, you can now identify areas where you might be able to cut back. The key is to distinguish between essential and non-essential spending. Essential expenses are things like rent or mortgage, basic groceries, utility bills, and essential medication, things you absolutely need to live. Non-essential expenses include things like dining out frequently, expensive subscriptions you rarely use, impulse buys, or high-end entertainment. During tough economic times, it's these non-essential areas where you'll likely find the most room to reduce spending without severely impacting your quality of life. The goal of budgeting in a recession is not to deprive yourself of everything enjoyable, but to make conscious choices that align with your reduced income or increased costs. Look at your non-essential spending and decide what you can realistically reduce or eliminate. Perhaps you can cancel a streaming service you don't watch often, or reduce the number of times you eat takeaway food each month. Even small changes, when added up, can free up a significant amount of cash that can then be reallocated to cover essential costs or to build up an emergency fund, giving you a greater sense of security. Section 8. Smart ways to save, making every dollar count. Once you have a budget in place, the next step is to actively look for ways to make your money stretch further. This involves adopting some smart saving habits that can significantly reduce your outgoings. One effective strategy is to become a savvy shopper. Before you buy anything, especially larger items, compare prices at different stores or online. Look for sales, discounts, and promotional offers. Don't be shy about using coupons, whether they are paper ones from the newspaper or digital ones from apps. Planning your shopping trips around weekly specials at the grocery store can also lead to substantial savings on your food bill. Another major area where savings can be found is food. Eating out and ordering takeaways can be very expensive. Try to cook more meals at home. Planning your meals for the week can help you create an efficient shopping list and reduce food waste. Pack your lunch for work or school instead of buying it each day. When you do go grocery shopping, consider buying generic or store brands instead of premium-priced national brands. Often, the quality is very similar, but the cost is much lower. Reducing meat consumption slightly, or incorporating more budget-friendly plant-based proteins, can also lower your grocery expenses. Energy consumption is another area where small changes can lead to noticeable savings on your utility bills. Be mindful of your electricity and gas usage. Turn off lights when you leave a room, unplug electronics that draw phantom power when not in use, and consider lowering your thermostat by a degree or two in winter and raising it in summer if you use air conditioning. Wash clothes in cold water when possible, and always run full loads in the dishwasher and washing machine. Fixing leaky faucets can also save a surprising amount of water and money over time. Finally, think about how you spend your leisure time. Entertainment doesn't have to be expensive. Instead of going to the cinema frequently, explore free or low-cost alternatives. Many communities offer free events in parks. Libraries often have a great selection of books, movies, and even museum passes. You could organize potluck dinners with friends instead of going to restaurants, or explore local hiking trails for a free and healthy activity. Being creative with your leisure time can help you maintain a good quality of life without breaking the bank, which is especially important when finances are tight. Section 9. Building resilience, preparing for and navigating financial storms. In challenging economic times, having an emergency fund is more important than ever. This is a sum of money set aside specifically for unexpected expenses, like a medical bill, an urgent car repair, or to cover living costs if you temporarily lose your income. Even if things are tight, try to save a small amount regularly, even if it's just a few dollars each week. The goal is to build a cushion that can prevent you from going into debt when an emergency strikes. Start small and be consistent. Every little bit helps to create that vital safety net for your finances. If your income has been reduced or you are facing job insecurity, consider exploring ways to earn extra money. This could involve looking for part-time work, freelancing using skills you already possess, or starting a small side hustle. Think about hobbies or talents that could be monetized, such as crafting, tutoring, pet sitting, or providing delivery services. While it might require extra effort, diversifying your income streams can provide a crucial financial buffer and reduce your reliance on a single source of income, which is particularly valuable during an economic downturn when primary jobs may be less secure. Don't be afraid to seek help if you are struggling. There are often government assistance programs available to help people facing financial hardship. These might include unemployment benefits, food assistance programs, or help with utility bills. Community organizations and charities also often provide support, such as food banks or debt counseling services. Research what resources are available in your area and reach out. There is no shame in needing assistance, especially during widespread economic difficulties. These programs are designed to help people get back on their feet. Finally, while it's important to be realistic about the challenges, try to maintain a sense of hope and perspective. Economic downturns and periods of high inflation do not last forever. Economies tend to move in cycles, and periods of recovery eventually follow periods of recession. Stay informed about the economic situation, but also focus on what you can control: your budgeting, your spending habits, and your efforts to save and earn. By taking proactive steps and building financial resilience, you can navigate these tough times more effectively and be better prepared for the future when conditions improve.